Do you remember that feeling? The last class on a Friday, with spring break just hours away. Total freedom. We were in calculus, but our teacher was chill, so we were all on sporkle.com. I had just typed in Adidas on a brand logo quiz, when the intercom crackled to life. IT was the dean. And his voice wasn't right. It was tight with sheer panic. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Go into lockdown, now. That feeling, that sudden sickening drop in your stomach when the world outside your classroom door becomes a threat. For a long time, many of you have written to me, asking to hear stories about school lockdowns. We see the major tragedies on the news, they're horrific. They dominate our screens for a week, and then they fade. But what about the countless other incidents? The ones that never make the headlines? The quiet traumas that echo in hallways long after the police have left? These are the stories from the students and the teachers who lived through them. Tonight, I have 3 allegedly true stories, sent in from the hallways and hidden corners of schools during a lockdown. 3 stories that prove the real horror isn't always what's on the news, it's what's happening in the classroom right next door. Our first story begins in one of those very classrooms. A place so ordinary, so buried in the routine of a Tuesday afternoon, you'd never suspect it could become a cage. It was calculus class. The narrator, let's call him Mark, was bored out of his mind. He wasn't listening to the lecture, he was on sporkle.com, playing a logo quiz, the quiet clicks of his mouse the only rebellion he could muster. He had just typed Adidas when the dean's voice crackled over the intercom. It wasn't the usual calm, monotone announcement. This was different. There was a tremor in her voice, a sharp edge of panic as she said the 5 words that turned every student's blood to ice. This is not a drill. Before anyone could process it, the power to the entire school was cut. The projector died, the humming fluorescent lights overhead went dark, plunging the room into a disorienting, murky twilight lit only by the grey sky outside. And in that sudden, deafening silence, a new sound began. A man screaming. It was distant at first, a raw, guttural sound from the other end of the building. In the darkness, a silent language passed between every student, eyes, wide and white, searching for another's, asking the same question without a sound. Did you hear that? I saw a girl's hand clamp over her mouth, another boy frozen, his knuckles bone white as he gripped his desk. Our teacher, a man who usually seemed unflappable, was fumbling at the classroom door, his hands shaking so much he could barely lock it. He dragged a heavy filing cabinet in front of it, the metal feet screaming against the floor. Then the screaming got closer. We could hear him now in our hallway. We heard a loud, metallic bang, then another, and another. He was hitting the lockers, banging on them, one by one, as he walked down the hall towards us. Each impact was like a drumbeat, counting down the seconds until he reached our door. Then, the banging on the lockers stopped. Right outside our classroom, the silence that followed was somehow worse. We held our breath, and a voice, inches away, on the other side of that thin wooden door, screamed, "I'll kill all of you." It was a promise. It was followed by a series of heavy, sickening thuds against the door itself. Someone in the back of the room let out a choked sob. And then, he just moved on. The thuds stopped. The footsteps faded down the hall. We stayed there, huddled in the dark and the silence, for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, the dean came back on the intercom, her voice still shaky, trying to assure us that the threat had left the property. No explanation. Just, it was over. But the true horror came later. A janitor, making his rounds after the police had swept the building, found a man hiding in a bathroom stall. He was just sitting there. The janitor said the man's eyes were completely empty. And in his pocket, he had a .44 Magnum. Before the janitor could even call for help, the man just stood up, pushed past him and walked out of the school. He was never seen again. Mark says he has no idea if that was the man who screamed outside his door, and he says the not knowing is the worst part. Sometimes the monster is a phantom in the hallway, but other times, it's the devil you know. Our second story comes from a submitter who was in middle school at the time. She said it was a grey, overcast day, the kind where the clouds are so low and heavy you feel like you could reach up and touch them. She was at lunch, talking with her friends, when they heard it. 4 loud, resonant booms, they rattled the windows in the cafeteria. Everyone assumed it was thunder from the approaching storm, But then the security guards started running. They weren't walking, they were sprinting, their faces grim, shouting for everyone to get into the multi-purpose room. Now, the mood shifted instantly from lunchtime chatter to hushed panic. Hundreds of kids were herded into the big, windowless room, whispering, asking what was happening. Rumors spread like wildfire. A bomb threat. A school shooting. No one knew. That's when her friend Eric, who lived in the neighborhood, leaned in and whispered the truth. He pointed in the general direction of his house. "It's him," he said. "It's that man." The man lived in a house that bordered the school's property. He was a registered sex offender, and according to Eric, deeply mentally unstable. The 4 booms weren't thunder. They were the sound of the SWAT team using a battering ram on his front door because he'd barricaded himself inside. And just as that cold realization washed over her, another friend, Brandy, shared something even more chilling. She said she had seen the man just a few months prior. It was Halloween night. The air was crisp, smelling of burnt sugar and fallen leaves. Kids were running around in costumes, and the whole neighborhood felt festive, alive. But Brandy had looked over at the man's house, at his front picture window. She saw him standing there, moving his arm back and forth in a strange, rhythmic motion. She thought he was just putting up a spooky decoration, maybe painting something on the glass, but as she looked closer, she realized he wasn't holding a paintbrush, and the paint was too dark, too thick. It was running down the glass. He was cutting his own arm, and with his own blood, he was writing a message on the window over and over again. The message was 3 words: "I'll kill you." The next day, his family had cleaned it up. Everyone just assumed it was a morbid, edgy prank for the holiday. But it wasn't a prank. It was a preview. And now, he was right next door, and the entire school was trapped, waiting to see if he would finally act on his bloody promise. That day, thankfully, ended without bloodshed. The police handled it, but a story like that, it sticks with you, doesn't it? Both of the accounts you've just heard were about threats from the outside, an unknown man trying to break in, a known danger walled up next door. Terrifying, yes, but what happens when the lockdown isn't for a threat you can see coming? What happens when the monster isn't at the door, because he's already in the room with you, hiding in plain sight, pretending to be just as scared as everyone else? For one 22-year-old computer intern, this question wasn't a hypothetical. It was the longest few minutes of his life. Let's call him James. At 22, he was just trying to get through his internship, a job that had him stationed in what was generously called the IT office. In reality, it was a doorless, forgotten corner of the school's sprawling, messy basement. A concrete cave filled with the ghosts of old computers, tangled nests of cables, and the faint, ever-present smell of dust and ozone. His only company was the low, constant buzz of a single fluorescent light overhead. That day started like any other. Until it didn't. The lockdown announcement crackled over the intercom, the voice tight with a panic that was all too real. In an instant, the world changed. The power was cut. The buzzing fluorescent light died, plunging the basement into a thick, disorienting darkness. The silence was the worst part. The usual hum of the school above him, the distant chatter, the slamming lockers, the life, it was all gone. Replaced by a silence so profound, he could hear his own heart hammering against his ribs. He did what anyone would do. He scrambled away from the open entrance of his office and pressed himself into the deepest, darkest corner he could find, behind a stack of old monitors. He held his breath, listening, and then he heard it, the slow, heavy creak of the main basement door opening at the far end of the hall. Footsteps, not frantic, not running. Slow. Deliberate, they echoed in the vast, empty space, getting closer and closer. They stopped right at the entrance to his little alcove. A silhouette blotted out the faint light from the distant stairwell. A man stepped inside. James's blood ran cold. The man spoke, his voice a low whisper. He said he was a parent who had been visiting, and he got trapped down here when the lockdown started. He asked if James knew another way out. Every instinct in James's body was screaming. Something was wrong, but the man seemed scared, and in those moments, you want to believe you've found an ally. So, trying to keep his own voice from shaking, James whispered back, telling him the only other exit was at the far end of the basement. The man thanked him and turned to leave. James let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, and in that exact moment, his phone, which he'd forgotten was on silent, vibrated in his pocket. A single, sharp buzz against his leg. He fumbled for it, his hands shaking. He had to tell his coworker he was okay. He pulled it out, the screen's glow feeling like a spotlight in the dark. It was a text from his coworker, Dave. He began to read, "Dude, this is crazy. Some guy with a gun shot Mr. Buckley." James's heart seized. Mr. Buckley was the kindest teacher in the school. He kept reading. He's wearing a red shirt and hat. Time stopped. The words on the screen seemed to float, refusing to make sense. Red shirt and hat. A strange, specific detail. He was just about to text back, to ask if Dave was okay, when a cold dread, a primal and absolute certainty, washed over him. He remembered the silhouette, the man who had just been standing a few feet away, the man he had just directed toward the only other exit. His breathing stopped. Slowly, as if moving through water, he lifted his eyes from the phone's tiny, glowing screen. The man hadn't left. He was still there, standing at the entrance to the office, his back to James and under the faint, grey light from the far-off stairwell. James could see it. A dark red shirt and on his head, a baseball cap. He was just standing there, perfectly still. The parent, the other person hiding. The monster. In that moment, 1,000 years passed. The man began to turn around. James didn't think. He just moved. A raw, animal instinct took over. He exploded from his hiding spot, shoving a metal rack of equipment over with a deafening crash and sprinting for the main stairwell. He heard a furious shout behind him. Then, the loudest sound he had ever heard in his life. An ear-splitting bang that echoed through the concrete cavern. Something metallic screamed past his ear, a high-pitched zing as the bullet ricocheted off a pipe in the darkness. He didn't look back. He just ran, his own frantic gasps for air drowning out everything else. He burst through the door at the top of the stairs and into a world of blinding light and chaos. SWAT officers, police, screams. He was safe. They caught him moments later, right where James had told him to go, the basement exit. Mr. Buckley, they later learned, survived, but for James, the sound of that gunshot, the ricochet in the dark, that will echo in his mind forever. That echo, it's the part no one ever really talks about, isn't it? The silence after the sirens finally fade. 3 stories, 3 schools, 3 moments where the world turned upside down. For James, it's the sound of that gunshot, a ricochet that will replay in the quietest moments of his life. For the students in that first story, it's the chilling knowledge that the man in the hallway, the one who started it all, was never found. He just vanished. So, how do you walk down that same hallway again? How do you work in that same basement and ever truly feel safe? When the immediate danger is gone, is the fear ever really gone? It makes you wonder, which of these 3 stories got to you the most? And have you ever had a scary lockdown experience? Share it in the comments below, let's talk about it. And that's the thing about these stories, isn't it? They remind us just how paper-thin our sense of safety really is, especially in the places we're taught to feel the most secure. Whether it's the unseen phantom in the hall, the known danger from just down the street, or the killer hiding in plain sight, each one forces us to look over our shoulder. So, if these stories chilled you to the bone, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true horror you won't find anywhere else. And make sure you turn on all notifications. Stories like these, they walk a fine line, and you never know when they might disappear. You don't want to miss the next one.